All right, we are live. Let me double check. YouTube is working, as always. I think it is, but it's not showing up. All right, there we go. All right, we are live, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Creating Alpha in Daily Fantasy MMA. My name is Brett Athlete. Most of you guys know me as BB Bomb, and I'm here with two very special guests. My usual co-host, Joe, Mr. Sun Tzu. Joe, how's it going?
Good, man. I mean, as good as it can be for someone who went 11-2 last week in his selection straight up, 5-1 in his primary lineup in DraftKings, yet still happened to lose 70% of the contests that I entered. So that you almost have to try to do that. So I'm actually quite proud of myself.
Well done, Joe. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our other guest, I'm sure, I want to say I'm sure the vast majority of people know you, but
they might not.
It's been a while. So I'd like to welcome back one of the true OGs of Daily Fantasy MMA, Chris, better known as Gravy Cakes. Chris, it's been a long time, man. It's great to talk to you. Great to have you back. How you doing, and what have you been up to?
Yeah, great to be back. Man, I feel like I remember seeing the first Creating Alpha. I wasn't on it, obviously, but no big deal. I'm good, guys. Like, I've just been, I stepped away because I've been focusing on work. Work's actually been paying off and doing quite well. Been fortunate enough to travel around the world a bit for it. So everything's been good, but I've been missing this. I've been missing you guys. I got the itch to come back. I have a little bit of free time. I just finished a bunch of traveling, moved into my new place. So I have like a weekend to just sit down and read your premium section, the beatdown. Look at some sharp bets you got up there, Brett. And but you know what? A lot's changed, guys. Like, there's no more Grinders Live. I have to complain about one thing. Instead of Grinders Live, we have to listen to an hour and 40 minutes of Brett's solo soliloquy in the marketplace. You really need a co-host, Brett. Not to take away from your analysis, but it really helps when you got like a couple people in there just going back and forth.
It's funny you bring that up because, again, for those who don't know, like, I started this, I think, in like January of 2015. So it's been a long time. And this is when like DraftKings had just launched MMA. There was like 40 people in every contest. And I was just writing blogs on Roto Grinders. I was talking to myself super awkwardly in front of a camera. And this is in the very beginning, and Gravy Cakes is the one who ultimately reached out to me and was like, you need a co-host. I would like to be that co-host. Like, what do you say we do some podcasts together? And that's really what helped spiral this whole thing. So I am forever indebted to Chris, and you're probably right. It's probably super boring to listen to me talk for an hour and a half. So
well, I'll say one thing though. Like the first time I listened to you, I said, "Wow, this guy really knows his stuff." And I mean, look at us, or look at you 3 years later. You're doing great. So congrats to you. And Joe, I mean, nice to see you as well. Sirius XM superstar now. I mean,
by the way, news break. I just found out I will be going on. It looks like around 2:30 Eastern time tomorrow. And that's the Fantasy Sports Channel, which is 210 or something in the 80s. I usually tune into 210. It's the Fantasy Sports Channel. It's part of the RotoWire block of time that they have. So I just got an email. I'm not sure what the topics are going to be, but I am definitely the crash test dummy for this. So hopefully I don't shit the bed, and we get more of these opportunities.
And thanks for reminding me on that, because I did want to congratulate you, Joe. And so what are the details here? Is this an every week thing? Is it going to be you and the guys from RotoWire as well?
Well, this was, back, and again, I'll sort of give a quick overview of my history with RotoWire. So one of the principals of RotoWire is actually a fraternity brother of my younger brother from Northwestern. So my brother reached out to this guy and said, hey, my older brother is a DFS MMA player. Are you guys looking to build that part up of your current offerings? Because RotoWire is always known as like a baseball, big into baseball, big into football, Are you guys looking to do that? And the principal of the company said, yes, let me hand him off to, our MMA editor, because we are looking to build something up. So I got together with our friend, Sean, the now known as the DFS 1S sniper, and one of the guys that had been kind of writing semi-regularly for RotoWire, Chris Olson, right? So we kind of got together, we talked through it, we decided we'll do this show that we called Fight IQ, which is a DraftKings-oriented show that breaks down every fight, and we'll do it every week. But I let it be known to the MMA editor over there, a gentleman by the name of Jake, that, hey, I'd really be interested in doing something on Sirius. So, apparently, football and baseball rule over there, and we just happen to be in a time right now where there's no football or baseball, so they're willing to carve out some time, to do MMA. So I don't know if it's going to be a weekly thing. I suspect, at least initially, it will be, for pay-per-views, bigger pay-per-views. And obviously, John Jones, even casuals know who John Jones is. And there's also some sufficiently large prize pools this week, which we could certainly talk about later, to, where there's going to be some interest, right? And we could talk about some players who only come in and out of MMA are actually playing this week as well, I've noticed, and we'll talk about that. So I'm the crash test dummy here, and then I think ultimately, we'll rotate between myself, Chris, and Sean, and the ultimate goal is for us to get a show. I haven't even brought that up yet, but ultimately to look, it could be 2:00 in the morning on Thursdays, whenever the deadest time is, because our community is small, but it's pretty vocal, which is what I like about it. And it's there's no defined season to it. It goes all year round, right? So yes. We'll see. But that's sort of how it all came to play. And they reached out to me this week and said, hey, are you free on Saturday? I'm like, I'll make fucking time. Do you want to come on? I'm like, yes, I want to come on. So we're kind of working through what the itinerary is going to be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just got an email saying you will be going on at 2:30-ish. We'll kind of talk about some topics and questions. So,
well, that's awesome. Congrats again. Hopefully that sticks. Obviously, if you ever need an extra guest, feel free to reach out to me.
Of course.
Follow Joe on Twitter, Sunsu, if you want to stay up to date on his serious happenings. Guys, let's jump into UFC 235. This is the biggest card of the year so far. One of the biggest cards in a while. 50K up top in the $15. Chris, do you remember what the contests were like last time you were here? Have you ever seen a $50,000 first prize?
Some of those McGregor ones got pretty big.
We had 100,000, I think. I think we had 100,000 first prize. Right?
I know we've had it once before. Yeah, I just can't remember when that was.
I was definitely around for that one.
Joe, any complaints?
No, not that I can think of. I mean, and that's unusual for me. I mean, there's a lot of contests. There's there's an $8. There's the $4 is up to 3,000. I think the mini max is up to 2,000. So look, I wish it was $10 and not 15, because I as we were discussing before we went on, I just put 120 lineups into the 15, and it's starting to get expensive now. Also, there's a 10K in the 150, which I really like. Well, 11 max entry, in the $150 contest with the 10K first. And they've already put out the televised slate, which this is about as early as I've ever seen the televised slate come out. And there's some really nice contests in that televised slate too. So I can't think of really any complaints. Lots of qualifiers for the, for the challenge. So yeah, it's a really good slate of contests.
Well, let's take a look at the slate as a whole. And I guess, Chris, I'll start with you. You're more of a numbers guy than Joe, certainly, more like myself. What do you think of this slate as a whole? Anything stand out to you? And then I guess let's just jump into the main event as well. We don't necessarily need to break down Jones versus Anthony Smith, but when you see a guy minus 840, priced up at 9.6K, we know he's going to be chalk. Just from your perspective, are you going to be forcing John Jones in lineups this week in cash games and tournaments? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to do it in cash. And I think stacking it as well leaves you a lot of money for some of the guys that you might really like in that mid range, and there are a bunch of attractive guys in the mid range that you can look to gem in here. High floor guys, high floor, high ceiling guys that are favored. So I think it's hard to get away from John. One thing I want to talk to you guys about definitely later on is just attacking John in tournaments, and even both favorites in the main and co-main. Is it crazy to fade both of those guys? Like, I don't even think it's crazy at all. That's actually one of the reasons I decided to come back as a casual and punt off a bunch of money this week. Was I really think there's an edge in actually just fading both John and Tyron this week and just see where the chips fall. I think it's very viable.
Well, I have to say that thought process is very refreshing to hear. Before I give my take, Joe, what do you think about John Jones? What do you think about fading the main event and the co-main event?
Well, I think that Chris is partially right. I mean, I could certainly see fading Woodley. Of the four, obviously, of the three fighters that I see as viable, Woodley, Jones, and Usman, I can certainly see fading Woodley. I could see that. There are better value above and even below him, so I could see that. I think it's difficult to phase Usman in a 5-round fight at his price point.
I agree with.
I think it's. I certainly think you could fade Smith because other than for game theory, I think I have 2% Smith in my lineups. I will say that Jones, though, and this is where this could be the biggest pork chop I've ever eaten. Jones is my second highest fighter concentration. And so far I have 120 lineups that I put into the $15 contest, and Jones is my second highest concentration.
Interesting. I don't have much exposure to John Jones this weekend. I think you can go that route, and I wrote this up in premium. I think kind of the take is pretty obvious, though. When you got a guy 9.6K, he's going to be 50, 60% owned. If you're playing large field tournaments, yes, he can end up on the optimal lineup, but even if Jones goes out there, puts up 110 points, you're thrilled, you got him on 70% of your teams. Like, that really doesn't even help you. You're still forced to compete with 10, 12, 13,000 other lineups who also have John Jones, who are also forced into a similar construction. There's a lot of other chalky plays. So
I am under 50%. I will say that. I'm under 50%.
I definitely do not mind. You don't necessarily have to fade John Jones, but I think you can. I think you can certainly be underweight to the field. The co-main event is trickier, and if I was fading one of the two fighters, it would be Woodley. If Woodley wins a decision, he's not ending up on the optimal lineup. He has to win by knockout early, which is possible, but that's the only path he has to the optimal lineup. So I personally don't want to play him heavily this weekend. Usman, I'm going to have more exposure to. A decision from him at 7.5K.
Yep.
Would probably get it done. Chris, so of the four main co-main event fighters, would you say Usman is the guy you're most likely to have exposure to?
I'm going to try real hard. To ensure that he's the only one. I will probably sprinkle in some John Jones. I'm not saying I'm going to completely fade him, but I'm going to try. I don't think that's going to be possible, though. It's going to be pretty natural to start clicking him a bit, but actively, I think I'm going to try and fade Woodley, Jones as much as I can, and I'm not going to touch Smith. And I think Usman is someone I definitely want to have exposure to.
And since we have you here in cash games as well, Joe and I just clash on this subject. Stacking in cash, would you consider stacking the main event, the co-main event, even double stacking, which probably sounds crazy to Joe, but I've definitely done it in the past. What do you think about the double stack?
Double stack's good in the sense where you have two active fights, or at least one with a good favorite like John Jones, who you want some salary relief from the other ends to get other favorites in. So if I had maybe like a, John Jones or a non-Tyron Woodley fight in the co-main with a little more activity, I could definitely look at stacking. Like you get we used to stack Joanna's fights a long time ago with all the girls' fights and things like that. But I don't know if I want to fight a Woodley fight just based on the Woodley effect. I was actually going to ask you that, Brett. Like, what are your thoughts on Usman just by himself? Do you think he's going to actually keep up that pace that he normally does? Or do you think he might turn into Darren Till? Or does the Woodley effect, just everybody?
There's certainly potential for Usman to kind of bust just based on the style of Woodley fights. And I definitely don't think you have to double stack on this card or stack at all. But less so because of Woodley and more so because of the options surrounding Woodley. And we haven't talked about them yet, but guys like Askren, Zabit, Stamen, even like Garbrandt, those are all pretty solid options. So I don't hate the co-main event stack, but if I was to play one of those two fighters, Woodley or Usman from the co-main, it would be Usman. And you could definitely consider pivoting off Woodley to someone with a higher floor, in a sense. Joe, you look like you are just ready to.
No, I think there's so much value under 8K that there's absolutely no reason to stack here. I mean, there's so much value under 8K. So I can't see. I mean, look, Jones could nuke. It's typically not his fighting style, but he could nuke Anthony Smith in 30 seconds, and that would make for a horrible stack. And then Woodley, Usman, if their wrestling neutralizes each other, that could be a very ugly scoring fight too. So you mentioned value plays that you like. Do you want to let us in a little bit? What's one or two of those values that you're looking at? Sure. I mean, look, I'll give you the obvious one. Well, at least I think it's obvious. Munoz. I really like him quite a bit. Obviously, the buzzworthy play out there is Sanchez. Mm-hmm. I think he'll be pretty highly owned. He's very attractively priced. I'm hearing some love for Cyphers. In that lower range. I personally, although I haven't been hearing that much love for her, and she's probably a better cash play. I like Tisha Torres here. I mean, I for a number of reasons. One is, if Andrade can't finish her and JJ can't finish her, and she arguably beat Rose Namajunas twice. I scored that second fight for her despite being on Rose. I don't see this Wei Zhang finishing her. And, a little bit of narrative here, which I know you're not a big narrative guy like I am. She actually did this camp at ATT. Her last few camps have been, in Colorado with Rachel Pennington, just like a 2-person camp. She went back to ATT for this camp. I really think that's a positive sign that she's motivated and not just looking for a paycheck. I frankly like her to upset here. But I really do think she's a really solid cash play. Her floor is probably higher than her ceiling just because she is a decisionator. But I think she's fairly safe in cash.
Well, I want to talk about the first couple names you mentioned, Munoz and Sanchez and Chris. This is always a struggle, not just with me, just in general. What to do with these value plays. And I know Munoz isn't like an elite value, but he's only, where is he at? Plus
145.
Plus 125 on Munoz at 7.7K is a pretty decent value.
Yeah.
In cash games, like how important are those value plays to you? And then in tournaments, like how much do you again consider the value versus the leverage on the other side? Is just like, is Munoz a play that you're just based on the leverage or based on the value itself? Is Munoz a guy that you just don't really have to think twice about? You're going to plug him into some lineups, or how do you approach those types of situations?
I mean, active guys like him who, especially in tournaments, who can get a win. I think those guys are definitely plug and play. I'm a little more price sensitive in the middle in cash. So like, I'm not saving that much money for 7,700 if that can bring me up to the opportunity cost of having a stronger favorite on the other side, and like maybe dropping down to Usman for the extra 200 to get to a bit better favorite. Like those are things you need to kind of consider when you're making decisions like that in cash. Obviously, a lot less price sensitive when it comes to tournaments and just looking at leverage spots. And then Sanchez on the other side of that is actually when I first heard that Sanchez was fighting and everyone was hyped on him. You ever seen those like MMA tweets where that little guy comes out the hole and he sees like some tweets and then he like walks back in? That was me. I came onto Twitter, saw everyone hyping Sanchez, and I was like, well, maybe I'm going to cancel my MMA subscription this week and just like go another week. Because if Sanchez is like getting hyped up like 20 years into his career, like what's going on here, guys? Can you guys explain?
I mean, I'm trying to think about it logically because, in our bubble, he's definitely popular. I don't think he's going to be, 35, 40% owned. But when you look in that range, obviously people aren't really going to play Smith. People aren't going to play Mazzani. Cyphers might get a little love, but she's not going to be popular. And then below Usman, you got Jeremy Stevens and Robbie Lawler, who, again, could get some ownership, but the favorites on the other side are going to be popular. It feels like Diego Sanchez is going to be popular in that range, whether it's 25, 28, 30, 32%, something in that ballpark. I do think he's going to be popular. I mean, the part of it is value. He's only plus 190, which isn't a bad number. But the other major part of it is Diego Sanchez is coming off a decision win. He was able to land a few takedowns, get a few advances, earned a decision. And Mickey Gall is Mickey Gall. He's still known as the guy who beat CM Punk. Is not viewed as like a credible UFC fighter, which I understand. And so the combination of those two and the price range, it just feels like a lot of people are going to gravitate toward Diego. And I still don't know what to do with it. Like I'll probably I'll end up probably having some exposure to Diego just so he doesn't kill me. But at the same time, I have to look at it like, Diego Sanchez hasn't won by TKO since 2008. It's been more than a decade. I just don't view him as a dangerous striker. And yeah, he was able to land a takedown at the beginning of every single round against his last opponent. I think Mickey Gall is better on the ground than his previous opponent, Craig White. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but I just don't feel like Diego Sanchez is going to have as much success in this fight as he did in his last fight. And because his ownership is now increased, that makes me want to pull away.
Hard for me to get past the guy that lost to someone who got knocked out with top control. I mean, it's really hard for me to get past that. That's so.
I
mean, who has Mickey Gall beat though? I mean, like let's look at these guys that a guy coming a 45-year-old coming off a 2-year USADA suspension. Sage Northcutt who had strep throat when he fought him. And
what do you think Sage Northcutt would do to Diego Sanchez?
Now this Sage Northcutt, this Sage would beat Mickey Gall. Sage has improved a lot. And like I said, he had strep throat when he fought Mickey Gall too. I mean, I'm not a Sage Northcutt advocate, and we might be going off topic here. I just haven't seen Mickey Gall beat anybody who's the least bit impressive.
I haven't seen it either, but he hasn't had that many opportunities. And I hate the Randy Brown comparison. Randy Brown is massive for the weight class, very long, much more dangerous than Diego Sanchez, who could be fighting at 155 pounds right now. It's just Randy Brown and Diego Sanchez are not on the same level.
Randy Brown has got so many holes in his game that a semi-capable fighter should be able to beat him. And it's hard for me. It's hard for me to get behind Mickey Gall. Look, I'm not a big Diego Sanchez advocate either. I think Diego brought a lot of emotion into that fight with Alex White. I mean, Alex White kissed him on the nose or something during weigh-ins? Craig White, and that was a big motivator for him. I think he's going to give a fair performance. I mean, I don't love him. I think, what was that number you threw out, ownership?
Close to 30%.
I'm probably right in that. I'm probably right in that neighborhood. Really close to that.
I mean, like, someone explained to me, like, okay, I get Gall's not good, right? Like I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Is going down to Sanchez so you can get like 2 studs? Because when I look at Diego Sanchez, I don't see a guy scoring a lot of points even in wins. You know what I mean? So like, even if he wins, like, what's the worst I could? You know what I mean? Like,
I think
he's
you
not
called it. I think you go down to Diego because you could get
John Jones.
Yeah,
that's how you get John Jones, and people are so desperate to play John Jones that they're playing Diego Sanchez in 2019, and then they're going to pair that combination with guys like Zabit and Woodley or Usman, and wonder why they're tied with 15,000 other entries at the end of the day.
Yeah, I haven't done any roster construction, so it's hard for me to say. I guess it makes sense, but it's like he's plus 200. If he's going to be 30% owned, odds are he's probably a pretty good fade, because odds are he loses and then you're up on all those people. That's just my opinion,
and he's only plus like 900.
Yeah, he's not like he's going to finish. So you have outs even if he wins.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The big issue is that he could be the cheapest fighter who actually gets a win, and that could be how you get John Jones into your lineup. So like, again,
with everybody else, everyone's gonna have John Jones Sanchez combos. Like,
yeah, I understand it, and I have some exposure, but Diego Sanchez is certainly not a hill I'm dying on this week.
Brett, I just want to say something. I'm not here for 1 week a year to tie with 300 people in UFC 235. Like, I'm here to win solo. I don't want to tie with 400 people. So
I mean, that's smart. If you're going to get lucky, which it takes luck to win tournaments anyway, if you're going to get lucky and hit that optimal lineup, personally, I would rather have that be on a week where I'm not tied with 5,000.
And we're down a fight, so it's going to be hard to win solo. I mean, we're down a fight. I mean, we're down to 12 fights. Let's keep our fingers crossed, because if we go down to 11, it's almost not playable. The $15. But we'll see.
Let's talk about maybe this like upper middle range. I think there's a lot of solid plays in here. Garbrandt, Stamen. We already talked about Woodley, Zabit, Askren. I think a lot of these guys are going to be chalky, but it's kind of, unlike Jones, it's $600 cheaper. The ownership will be lower. It's very hard for me to get away from that range, especially with the wrestling potential and the high floor. So I guess, Chris, how are you treating that range? Do you expect to have a lot of ownership in there?
Yeah, I think that's probably a place I'm going to focus a lot of my ownership. Again, still haven't done a lot of roster construction, but I think that's definitely where I'm going to focus a lot of my attention.
Joe, anyone stand out from you in that range?
Define the range.
I mean, 9K to 8.5 is kind of what I was.
Okay. Yeah, my favorite play on the slate comes in at 8.9K.
Zabit.
Yeah, it's my favorite play on the slate. I have far more of him than anybody else.
You 100%? Are you 100?
No, I'm not. No, I can't do that. I tried that a few slates ago and got completely nuked by Moicano and Ramos. So no,
it's like impossible to get away from him, I think, on this slate. But I also do have concerns because I don't think Jeremy Stephens is as easy of a matchup as some of these, some of the opponents Zabit has fought in the past. But the guy's averaging, 123 fantasy points in 4 UFC fights. It just feels if he can put up 95 points, like he has a real shot at the optimal lineup. So I get it.
I like Munoz, so I'm going to be probably underexposed on Garbrandt. I mean, I just, Garbrandt is like, he's never been the smartest guy to begin with. And he's had so many concussions in his career. I don't know. I mean, I've watched some film on him and I watched some of his boxing matches. I mean, I saw him get not just knocked out, but like laid out. I mean, I've seen him get hurt so many times, and he just is coming off 2 decisive losses to maybe he can relax here because he doesn't have that level of animosity against Munoz. But I like Munoz in this spot anyway, so I'll be underexposed to Garbrandt. One person I really like for scoring is Stamen. I like Stamen a fair amount for scoring. I think he's a great cash play. I don't think he'll finish Perez because Perez is so durable. And I mean, shit, the guy's coming off a 7-fight win streak. But I think he could score a lot of points in that fight.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him and Askren just kind of as a bunch because these are guys who are not likely to finish, but they're very likely to land takedowns. And we've seen in the past takedowns add up. So you're willing to kind of sacrifice the inside distance lines for the wrestling potential there?
Yeah, probably more so on Garbrandt than Askren. I'm just a little concerned. I'm a little concerned. Well, one, the 9K price. I'd rather have Zabit at 8.9, and two, you just don't know. Like, look, I get it. I mean, everybody knows anybody who's an MMA fan knows who Ben Askren is. But let's be honest. I mean, the level of competition that he's faced has not been great. I think his last win was against a guy who had fought as low as 145 at one point in his career. He actually has a split decision win, against a subpar fighter on his resume. Do I think he wins this fight? I think the UFC would like him to win. Obviously, it was a very highly publicized trade. But I am having a hard time being supremely confident in Askren, although I will have exposure to him.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be supremely confident. There's really no reason to be, but it just is like it's a spot where if the guy wins, he's going to be landing 3, 5, 8 takedowns. He's going to be getting a shit ton of advances. So I like Askren in that spot.
Strikes.
Yeah, I mean, still, but
yep.
I mean,
no, you're right.
One takedown is worth 10 significant strikks. So
yeah, you're right.
That adds up. Chris, if we drop down to the more in the real mid range here, like 8-4 to 7-8, there's a couple fights that if you just look at the inside distance lines, Bird Shabazian minus 180 to end inside the distance, and Serkinov Walker minus 675 to end inside the distance, without necessarily knowing the skill set of each fighter. Is that something that's important to you, or do you expect to kind of target those fights in tournaments because of those numbers?
I mean, you just lobbing me softballs here, Brett, on the first
Welcome back.
Jeez. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. This is the money-making range, baby. I mean, right here, we got the perfect fight. The guy's name I can't pronounce, Shabazian or whatever, and Bird, like Shabazian, thank you. Like under-owned, minus 195 to finish, like give me all of that fight. Like, I don't even know who's going to win. Brett, the MMA master, doesn't even know who's going to win. Like, this is exactly where you want to go. Because all the people, especially the people in chat, because I'm looking at the comments and I'm like, ooh, what kind of spectators you guys getting these days? They're not going to touch these guys because they don't know who's going to win. So it's perfect. Like, give me all of that.
You guys getting that's good.
I mean, I'm reading the YouTube chat right now, and we got guys telling me that the UFC is rigged, and it's better to tie with 300 people to make a bit of money. Like, no, dude. Like, no.
No, yeah. You do not play GPPs for ROI. That's what cash games are for. I mean, like GPPs, I go in looking to take down, a major prize when I'm playing GPPs. I'm not looking for an ROI. I'll play cash games for ROI, mini tournaments, single entry even, but not mass entry GPPs.
Well, and to that point, it's hard to get a return on your investment in tournaments, and it's much, much harder to get a return on your investment in tournaments over the long run.
Right.
When the few times you do get lucky and hit that optimal lineup, you're tied with everyone else. It's
right.
It's a major hit to that ROI. So,
well, there's a lot of narrative on this Serkinov Walker fight, right? So obviously,
I haven't heard this.
Well, there is. Okay. Well, first of all, you have part of it is visual. I mean, obviously, there's recency bias, with Johnny Walker. I mean, he's fought 45 seconds and got 2 KOs. So the guy barely broke a sweat, which is why
Brett hates those guys.
Yeah, which is why he's turned around so quickly. But also the narrative on Serkinov, and I'm trying to confirm a few things. But Serkinov is, and it's not a happy story, which unfortunately not all narrative is good. His wife is battling breast cancer, and he's dealing with that, training for a fight, and apparently. He said in an interview that he needs the money. You know, like a lot of times when you have that in your head, like I don't know if I could train if I was dealing with something like that. And also, you know, his last camp, and a lot of people said that they thought Serkinov looked improved in his last fight. Now, look, it was Patrick Cummings. Let's not go crazy about it. But Serkinov left his little, you know, camp in Canada where his main sparring partner was a bantamweight, and went to Vegas. You know, was at the PI, was I believe at Extreme Couture. And I don't know if he did that this camp. I mean, I'm going to have to do, you know, I've been, you know, talking with Chips on this, and, you know, he was trying to research it, and he, you know, DM'd me back saying that, you know, the information that he got is that, you know, he did do his camp in Vegas this year. But, you know, so there is some narrative wrapped around this fight, and it is such a high finish probability fight that you need to have exposure to this fight. And I almost, and we've never seen Johnny Walker on the ground, but apparently he's supposed to have some ground chops. Although, you know, is he in love with his striking now? That, you know, he's going to try to, you know, tap that soft chin of Serkinov.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be like essentially all in on that fight. As long as it ends inside the distance, which it's projected to, I think the winner comes out with a high score. I have not been on Walker in his first 2 fights, so that's burned to me. At 8.4K, though, I'm willing to play him. I mean, I think one of his best chances to win is by first round knockout, and that would obviously hit the optimal lineup. I also think he's going to be more popular based on those recent performances. And yeah, if you look at his regional tape, like someone sent me the video of Walker just getting wrestle fucked on the regional scene, which he actually ended up winning that fight by knockout after he was held down for like 7 minutes. He got up and won by knockout. And they're like, is this kind of, what do you think about this as proof that he can survive the ground game and still win by knockout? You can win by knockout at any time, at any point in the fight. But to me, that's evidence that Walker is not the most sound grappler. Will Serkinov be able to take advantage of that? I don't know, but you would think Serkinov's going to try and get the fight to the ground. Once he gets in top position, he should have some advantage, and I'm willing to target both sides of the fight, hoping that it doesn't play out competitively. Either Walker knocks him out quickly, or Serkinov can get him to the ground. And the other fight, I'm not as heavy on because it's not minus 700 inside the distance, but minus 180 inside the distance. I don't expect Bird or Shabazian to be very popular. Those are the kind of plays that allow you to win first place in the tournament. So I agree with Chris there. It was a pretty easy answer to the question. I knew he was going to give me the answer. So what else do you guys want to talk about on this card?
I want to know.
Yeah, go.
Apart from if the UFC is fake, no, there's not that many questions in the chat.
Yeah, we're like professional wrestling.
So who are good pivots from John Jones up there? Like I see some of the girls up there have some inside distance props that are pretty good. I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Chiesen and Cash looks pretty tempting to me. I think, I don't think a whole lot of Gina Mazzani. And I think, someone who I think Pansy is actually much better than Gina Mazzani. That's who Chiesen beat to win the Ultimate Fighter finale at 145, dropping to 135 here. Look, she's only a 3-0 fighter, so it's hard to say, what her future is. But I think that she was essentially given a softball here in Gina Mazzani, and I think at least in cash, that could be a very interesting pivot. Now you're only saving $200, so is the $200 savings going to get you something that makes it worthwhile pivoting off of John Jones? That's kind of the question. Or are you doing it for ownership? I
definitely would not pivot off John Jones in cash games. In tournaments, though, this is the tough part of one of the very tough parts about this slate, because we say, oh, you can pivot off John Jones, he'll be very popular, but Chiasson, Viana, Gall, none of them stand out as elite options, but they do all have upside. Chiasson, it's hard to look past her inside distance line. It's like around minus 150. Don't care how she gets it done, but if we can say there's a good chance Chiasson finishes the fight.
Yep.
There's some chance that she just outscores Jones. I kind of like Mickey Gall, mostly just as the leverage option, because if Mickey Gall wins by first round knockout, which I think is one of his more realistic paths to victory, that obviously kills off a huge percentage of the field that has Diego Sanchez. And I also expect Gall to be very low owned. So Gall is definitely someone I am interested in pivoting to in that top tier. It's a risk. But again, if you're playing Diego Sanchez and he wins, and you got John Jones in the same lineup and he wins, chances are you're still probably not even cashing. There's just so many people who are going to have those combinations. So that's why pivoting helps. I don't know. Anyone stand out for you, Chris? Are you kind of on the same wavelength?
Yeah, I'm the one person that really. Those are the two people that really stuck out for me too. Chiasson and Gall, not as much, but
yeah, I don't like Vienna all that much. I think I think she's got to prove herself.
that also, I think, does make for an interesting pivot off Sanchez, which we kind of referenced it earlier. Yeah. But Cypher's at 7K. Viana's not going to be popular, but if we like John Jones and we like the Askren range and we like Gall more and we like Chiasson more, it's probably not going to end up with a ton of exposure to Viana. And so if we're already kind of fading Viana in this spot, which you don't have to do, but if we are ending up to very low ownership, it does make sense, I think, to get a little bit of exposure on the opposite side. Cyphers has some odds value, only plus 230 to win. That's not great. Not going to put up a big score, but I'm pretty confident she'll be lower owned than Sanchez. A very similar play to Sanchez, honestly. Viana hasn't proven anything in the UFC, so
agreed.
Something I'm interested in. I think we pretty much covered all the topics I wanted to get through. Joe, any other thoughts here?
No, just, again, just this game is such a fickle bitch. I mean, if you would have told me before last week's slate that I was going to get, go 11-2 with my selections, that my primary lineup was going to go 5-1 and I was going to lose money, I would have told you were fucking crazy. But, it's all about the slate. It's like picking the right fighters on the slate. And the only thing I did wrong, I followed all the odds value. I mean, I had Ferreira, I had Hadzovic, right? I had all except the only thing that didn't work for me was Jan. Like, he fights 2 very smart rounds and then all of a sudden decides to bum rush Santos and gets KO'd. So, this is a really tough game. I mean, you go 5-1, you expect to win. You get 11-2. I mean, I even faded Prazeres and Cash, which I was like patting myself on the back for. Unfortunately, the 2 Russian fighters scored shit, and that really hurt. Like, the 2 Russian fighters that I had backed, didn't score really well. They both went to decision, and that really killed me. So yeah, you just beat. This is obviously a card to spread on, especially if you're in mass entry. I would say just be careful. There are a lot of contests to chase, and I always say this, but there is often value in playing the televised slate because a lot of players focus on the main slate and just don't have the bankroll to also play on the televised slate. So, sometimes you don't have the same level of competition, in the televised slate that you might have. And the payouts are pretty good. I will say that I've noticed that, some of our old friends are back playing in this slate. I noticed a lot of games put up by A.E. Jones, and he only kind of comes in and out and plays, and his buddy, Will, they both have big cash games that they put up. And I am fairly certain that, at least A.E. Jones is going to max the $15. So, I mean, that's not a reason not to play it, but, there's definitely some money coming into this slate.
Chris, any final thoughts here? And I guess What can we expect from you next? Are you just going to be taking some time to yourself and your lovely girlfriend, just chilling? Maybe we'll see you again in a few months. Is that the thing, or are you going to be picking up the pace here?
Yeah, no, I think I'm going to try and come back for some of the bigger cards and play. Yeah, busy with work, obviously, and the lovely girlfriend. We just moved in together, so
congratulations.
Yeah, she's making me dinner in the kitchen right behind me, which thank you, baby.
You earned your black book. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well,
otherwise, no, I mean, I don't have too much to talk about on the slate. I kind of gave away my little piece before about, maybe fading a lot of the main and gaining some leverage in other spots. No, it's good to be back. I just, Joe's speech about going 11-2 and not making money, or 5-1 doesn't inspire confidence from a noob like me, but I'm going to try my best this week. I'm going to watch the fights, and expect to see me back for some of the bigger pay-per-view cards and stuff if they don't completely suck like some of the ones have recently.
Well, it's great to see you, and thanks for hopping on again.
Wichita next week.
Is it?
I believe so. And by the way, didn't Ben Rothwell retire? Like, I didn't even know he was on that. I didn't even know he was on that card. Like, I thought Ben Rothwell retired.
I haven't even looked at that.
Oh, you haven't even looked at it?
I won't
Okay.
think about it until probably Sunday or Monday. But
all the betting lines are out, by the way, for that slate.
I'll have to take a look after this. Thank you guys for the support as always. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a like. If you have any burning questions, message me on Twitter. I'll answer them. Thanks to Chris for coming back on. You can follow him on Twitter at GravyCakesDFS. Joe at Sunsu. Joe, you got the RotoWire pod later today?
Got the RotoWire pod at 8 p.m. We'll break down every fight with the DFS sniper and the real Chris Olsen.
Awesome. Well, make sure to tune in to that. Thanks for the support as always. Best of luck in your contest this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace.